Okay, let's get into the last part of this video series for this panel set. I think what we have here is that we are just pretty much planning on finishing plotting this guy. There's not a lot left to do. I mean, of course, we got to fill out the page notes, got to put in the dimensions, the materials, the hardwares, and the and any details that we haven't made just yet. So really not too much to do, but we're gonna wrap it up here pretty quickly. I think we can knock this out like no big deal. So let's start with dimensioning our views here. So let's go into our plan view and then start working through this guy here. Okay, so much like any other drawing, as long as you have something that interacts between two walls like this, you do need to put a VIF dimension there for verify and field. Just a little reminder there because we are going to be putting one here on our drawing, so that way these panels can be manufactured to the correct opening size of this wall right here. Because we aren't responsible for the framing of the wall, we do have to make sure that VIF gets on there, because if it's not, and the wall is framed different than what was shown on the architecturals, then we have to coordinate with that, and that's where the VIF comes in. So I'll also put one here too, just on the off chance that we need to also verify this wall width right here. And then same deal for this side as well. Just like this. All right. And then as we get into the panels inside of the elevator lobby, here's where I'm going to go and maybe make this a little bit more detailed. So here, I could do one dimension that goes wall to wall, which would be fine. I'm also going to dimension here between the wall and the elevator jamb. And of course, again, that will also have a VIF attached to it as well. You'll see that a lot of times with panels, most of the panels are going to have a VIF just due to what panels are in nature. You always have to verify they're going to fit on the wall that they're going on. And panels interact with a lot of other people's scope, more than cabinets do typically. So let's carry on these dimensions here. Now this one really isn't 100% necessary, but I'm still going to show it. Otherwise it would kind of look strange having like a break in the dimensions here. So I'm going outside of elevator jamb to outside of elevator jamb for this dimension here. And then this one I'm going to the inside. Well, sorry, outside of the jamb, but inside here to where our panels are going to sit. And I'm going to continue that method of approach all the way up until I get to where these panels go. All right. And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side of the elevator lobby here, because these ones do vary slightly from the ones on the right-hand side. So we're going to go down from there to here. And the other side, I kind of use an offset of about 10 inches or so. So I'm going to make sure my dimensions are all offset the same from the drawing. Okay, and then I'm going to use my dim continue to then continue to wrap out these dimensions here. There we go. There we go. And just a couple more here. Forgot this one actually has an extra door compared to the one on the right. All right. So before we go any further, all of these dimensions will pretty much have to have a VIF on them. So because of that, what I would like to do is, because this one already has the VIF applied to it, what I would like to do is kind of copy that VIF to all of these. There's an easy way to do it other than double clicking on each dimension and typing over them. You can click on a dimension that already has that VIF applied to it, and then you can copy the code here from where in your properties here under text override, you can copy that code out. All right, and then highlight any dimensions that don't have that VIF. And you'll see what you can do with that. Now is if you go back to properties and go back to text override, you can apply that code to all of those and it will apply the VIF, the drop down, and then the dimension below it, just like that. So plan view, that's about what I'm going to do here. I could also, well, here, I'll also include a dimension going from all the way down to this wall to where these panels would stop. And then from there, that's all I really need to include on this plan view. When we get to the elevation view, just like cabinets, we're going to get a little bit more detailed, and we're going to continue that same method of approach throughout each of our drawings here. Whoops, hold on. I must have done something weird. Oh, you know what? I put that dimension in paper space. Hold on. I got to be in my model space. So I double clicked in my viewport there. And now I'm going to apply that dimension from there to there. And from there to there. All right, and then the same for these two. What I'm going to do is use that same code and write a VIF on them. Although, like, really, it's nice to know this information. It doesn't actually correlate directly to our panels, but what I'm going to do with that, though, is now I'm going to go over to these panels over here in the elevation view, and then I'm going to start to dimension these out. These ones will get a little bit more nitty gritty, like I said. We're going to kind of go from left to right, and we're going to dimension each panel and each reveal. Much like when you're dimensioning a cabinet set, you're going to dimension each cabinet carcass itself, but in this case, we're going to dimension each panel. So as we go through here, what I would like to do is kind of start at the bottom, and I'm going to put a dimension here for this panel width. And we're going to go dim continue. We're going to go left to right, just like this. Once we get through dimensioning all of these panels, I have to do one more thing. I also want to make sure that these dimension lines are not intersecting my base trim, because right now they kind of are. If that happens, you'll see that you're going to have, well, when you print it, if you left those there, you're going to see that those dimensions are going to start to look like break lines or field joints in your base trim, and you really don't want that. So what we're going to do now that we have all of our dimensions applied here is we're going to use the stretch command. I'm going to highlight all of those dimensions here that are sticking up into my my base trim, and I'm going to deselect anything that is not a dimension here. So because I've selected a lot of these blue lines, I really want to avoid stretching those. We do not want to do that. So here I'm going to go through now, and I'm going to try to use this method to now shrink these lines down to there. Looks like that was pretty successful, and now all of our dimensions are not overlapping the base. I will actually go ahead and use that stretch command again to shrink these 1/4 inch reveal dimensions up a little bit too, because they're a little bit low, and I would like to kind of bring them in a little closer to our drawing like this. One thing that I also like to do as well, if there's space that allows for this, is I like to make sure that I denote what these 1/4 inch dimensions are. You can do that here in text override, or you can double click on each dimension and write this in. But I like to do the less than greater than, so that I have my dimension still, and then I'm going to go reveal after that. That way I'm actually explicitly stating that this is a reveal here. Let's see. I could go a step further and write like something like door opening here if I wanted to. And same with this too. I could write door opening. Although I wouldn't say that's necessary, I do think it helps with explaining what's going on right there. All right. Now, okay, now that we've got that, let's do our heights. So we're going to need our height dimensions here. So let's start with, sorry, let's start with the panels on the little, not soffit, but the little corridor panels we've got going on here. So what I'm going to do is I might I think what I'm going to do is go floor to ceiling here in this case. All right, we'll put those here. So floor to ceiling here, and then we're going to write VIF for that and AFF as well for verify in field and above finished floor. We'll have to make sure that this opening is that exact size because we do have a leg that comes down on the left and right. As you can see in our plan view here, those are those legs right there. So we need to make sure that the height is correct in order for us to build this accurately to what's out there in the field. Now, a couple other things that we wanted to mention that we aren't really able to as of right now with the view that we have is I wanted to mention some heights for these panels and this base over here. Typically when you're doing cabinets, you pretty much will have a dimension from the floor to the top of the counter, and then if there's a backsplash, you'll dimension that separately. Panels, you're going to go a little bit more intricate with that. And I mean, you really could do that in the section view, but I'm going to do that here as well as in the section view because our section view has a break in it. And due to that, I want to make sure that I'm able to show the entirety of what I'm dimensioning here. So again, I'm going to apply these dimensions as well to our section view at the end. But I'm starting here first. All right. So again, just like down here, what we can do is we can write in reveal after these dimensions that we just placed here for these smaller ones. That wouldn't be a bad idea. So we're going to go less than greater than reveal. And then I'm going to bring these in just ever so slightly, just like that, so they fit inside of my viewport. All right. And then the only other thing that I think would be helpful in this case is we probably want to do a floor to ceiling height for this cove up here. And I might just add that onto this side here because it looks like that's going to be the most appropriate place that it'll fit. If we put it anywhere else, it's going to start to get cluttered and we'll have dimensions starting to overlap, and you don't really want to go through all of that because that's kind of a pain. So what I'm going to do is go floor to ceiling here, and then also provide a, shoot, I did that again, and also provide a floor to ceiling height, well, floor to ceiling height plus whatever this would be on addition to the dimension we already placed here. So from there to the other drywall soffit up there. And then dim linear, we're going to go from there to the floor, just like this. Okay, there we go. All right, now I might bring this out just a tiny bit more because it does look like these are very close together. So maybe I'll go like another 4 inches out. And then again, just like the one we did before, we'll put VIF on here and AFF for above finished floor. Here, we should probably VIF this dimension as well, just because this is dimensioning the drywall. We want to make sure that that makes sense in order for these dimensions to get updated if this does vary at all from what we think it might be. All right, so we've got heights already dimensioned in, which is great. I do remember one thing that I was going to come back and do later, and I kind of forgot to do this. So I do need to add one more horizontal reveal through these panels. It's not in the architecturals, but realistically, you can't really have a panel that's 146 3/8 tall. It's just way too much. I mean, there is a way to build one that way, but it's not within our standard. I mean, we can do it, but we really don't like to. So in order to get these panels down to a more manageable size, you really want to try to make that 4x8 panel or no more than 4x8 panel. So what I'm going to do is find a place that that reveal would make sense to place it in. In our case here, I think realistically, if it was lined up with this here and went all the way across like the top of our elevator door, I think that would look fine. It would kind of carry that same line all the way throughout the entire elevation, and that would look just fine like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and draw in that reveal. I'll show you how I'll do that here. I'm just going to take a line straight across, starting with the top of the elevator door, just like this, and then I'm going to offset that line down a 1/4 inch to make that 1/4 inch spline reveal. Again, normally I wouldn't be adding reveals here unless I have to, but in this case, this is a kind of have to situation just because we really don't want to make a panel that's that tall. It's just not going to work out very well for us. So we'll need to add in the dimension for that reveal and the dimension for that panel now. And again, we're going to add the reveal to the end of that dimension just like that, like we've done before, and bring that on back so it's touching right there, just to be in line with the rest of the dimensions like that. All right, and I'm going to follow that reveal all the way through all of our panels here. So I do need to make sure that I carry that through. Let's see, I should run it all the way to there. I should run this all the way to there. And then I got to trim these lines out to where they need to be. Okay, here we go. All the way to there. And all the way to there. And then again, we're going to trim these back so that they're not intersecting the elevator doorway panels that are by others, so we don't need that. Just be careful not to erase your elevator panels that we already have drawn in the gray existing layer. There we go. Cool. And then one last step I want to do is clean up these corners because I really don't want to have these extra lines dangling over here. I'm going to get rid of those. Clean these up. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We are getting somewhere. And we'll have to do this exact same change to the opposite side of the elevator lobby as well. So hang tight while I go ahead and take care of that. Once that's done though, we should be able to carry on with where we were for plotting. So dimensioning the other elevation view and then our section of views here. So oops. Sometimes if you trim your dimensions go a little crazy. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and take care of that on this side over here as well. And then we will continue our dimensioning here. Oh, keep doing that. My apologies. Sometimes it's hard when you're working in Paperspace. You can, by accident, start drawing on Paperspace instead of inside of the viewport. So if you do happen to catch yourself making that mistake like I'm doing here, it might not be such a bad idea to try to do your drawing edits inside of your model space. That way you don't have that problem like I'm having here. Okay, then it's just trim and cleanup work. And then when we get to the end of this too, when we're done dimensioning these views, I'm also going to add a small note that says added reveal due to panel size limitations. That way, when they go to review these drawings, they have an understanding of why there's a reveal here when they didn't have one placed on their prints. It's better to try to explain it as best you can. That way, they don't make the assumption that we just added it for no reason. There is a reason for it. We just need to make sure that it's noted on the print. Okay, so yeah, let's go ahead and do our horizontal dimensions on this view. Making sure I'm in the viewport. Let's go through here. Start with a dim linear command, and I'm gonna go ahead and drop these in. All right. There we go. It's a pretty repetitive process, so just like anything else, you really just need to know what is the item or what are the items you want to be dimensioning. When you're new, it is very difficult to understand that because it is a new concept and there's a lot to think about as far as like what do I want to dimension and what's going to be needed by our shop to be able to produce these drawings. Whoops. Okay. So, oh my God. Sorry, we gotta get that fixed. We cannot have a 0-inch dimension on the print, so we're gonna redo that one real quick. There we go. All right. Now, before we finish, let's go ahead and do that stretch command again to bring these lines down. We're not intersecting our base trim at that rate. And I'm deselecting, holding down my shift key to be able to do that. I'm going to deselect all these blue lines and just leaving the red dimension lines that I'm trying to move. I'm going to bring those down to here. All right. And then just like up above, what we did before, we brought these 1/4 inch reveal dimensions up. I think it was about 6 inches up. And then we highlighted all of them, went into our properties, and added the text at the end that says reveal under text override. And then for the height dimensions, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to recycle the dimensions that I have on my other view above. I'll show you how you can do that. It's really easy. If you have a lot of repeat information on a drawing, it makes your life a lot easier because what you can do with that now is, well, let me make sure I'm in the right scale. Okay, so these viewports are at 1/2 inch scale. So first off, let's go back to our model space and we're going to set our scale down here to the matching scale of our viewport at 1/2 inch equals a foot. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mirror these dimensions over. So mirroring all of these over, including this side as well. And when you're done selecting objects, hit enter. It's going to ask you for the first point of the mirror line, to which I'm going to say shift and right click and go mid between 2 points. And then what I'm going to do is use this corner and the opposing corner over here to then mirror all of these dimensions over. And I do not want to erase my source objects because that would erase all the dimensions off my first view. So let's not do that. All right. And as long as your two elevation views are the same width, you should have no problem mirroring both of these at the same time. If it does vary in width for any reason, you would probably want to mirror this set separately from this set, just in case there's any issues there. All right, so going back to our paper space, let's make sure none of these dimensions got cut off by any of the viewports. That's really important too. It looks like we're probably in the clear, so that's great. As we mentioned before, I do want to add a note somewhere here that explains the need for these extra reveals that we added. And what I'll probably do is make a drafter's note at the bottom of the view. So starting with either a text box or a leader, what you can do is you can write in drafter's note, followed by the colon there. And then what we're going to do is write in added, let's see, let's write added horizontal reveal due to panel size limitations. And we will leave it at that. I'm going to get rid of the leader now and then highlight the text one more time. And I'm going to put an underline underneath the drafter's note part of it, just making sure that that's stated as like the title of what we're talking about here. Typically what I like to do is kind of line these up on the bottom right corner of my views that are applied to the, or that are applying to that note. So I'm going to copy this over to this view now and paste that about there too. Okay, so now that we have those two notes placed on the print, I think dimensionally we're looking really good with these two views. Really not much more to add. So in that case, let's go on to our section views next. Oh, we got one more elevation view, I'm sorry, to do before we can do that. This elevation view is not so difficult. What we're going to be doing is kind of mimicking some of the dimensions that we've done here. Of course, we still want to go floor to ceiling in that area, but I'm going to go a little bit more detailed on this one and actually show the thickness and the reveal of these panels here. So let's do that. Let's go dim linear. And let's start with the horizontal dimensions down here. So let's go 1/2 inch for the first dimension. That will be the 1/2 inch reveal between the wall and the start of our cased opening. And we're going to go dim continue. And in the middle here, I'm going to write a VIF on this because this will be the opening. And we'll put VIF opening here. All right. And then you can see I have quite a bit of overlap happening, so we're going to clean that up as well. First things first, let's make these dimensions using the stretch command. We're going to make these dimensions a little closer to our view. And then we need to take these outside and inside dimensions and separate them kind of like this. That way we actually are able to see what these dimensions are supposed to say. So like that. All right. And then last things here, I want to add in a note that says reveal. Same thing here. We're going to add a note that says reveal. All right. And then we're going to go dim linear, and we're going to go from floor to, let's start with the underside of that panel here. Okay. And we're going to set that off to the side like we've been doing. Come on. Okay. And this one here, let's go and write VIF because we have the opening here. So VIF for verifying field and above finished floor, meaning that that panel from the underside of that panel to the floor will be 155.5. As long as we verify that and make sure that it works. All right. Height-wise, from here we've got the 1.25 inch for the thickness of the panel, and then we have the 1/2 inch for the reveal here. Again, like down below, I need to clean these up. I cannot have them overlapping like that, so I gotta move them around and play around with where I can put these dimensions to make sure they don't overlap. And something like that will be just fine. They're not overlapping, they're kind of cleaned up, they're closer to my view. That's perfect. One more thing I wanted to mention though is I kind of want to have that floor to drywall ceiling dimension placed on here as well. Because that will also be a needed dimension here for this. And again, just like the other one, we'll be VIFing that and making sure it's noted as above finished floor. Okay, trying to think if there's anything else we really need. Maybe we could do a full opening dimension on here, although I think we have that on the plan view, so maybe we don't need to go that route. Yes, we do at 91 inches here, so we don't really need that dimension here. You could add it, wouldn't be wrong. It would just be a little bit more clutter is all. So I'm going to avoid doing that here. Just make sure we've got everything. All our reveals are noted. Every dimension that we need is placed on here. Let's move on to the section views now. So section views, in this case, we have them dimensioned at 3 inches equals a foot, which is a little bit more than we're used to seeing, but that's all right. We're going to go into the model space and we're going to set our view scale or annotation scale to 3 inches equals a foot. So we're matching our section views in our in our paper space. And then what we're going to do is we're going to dimension these similar to the other panels we've been doing. So if you want to refer back to the first one we did, which was P15, you can go back to Proscenium's job folder here, and you can pull up the P15 drawing and take a look at what we did there for that. It has the same exact base trim, same exact metal angle underneath of it. So we do want to match that here. So I'm going to pull it up as a reference, but really I'm just using it as a reference. And so some of the stuff that we did before, we can still do that here. We did make blow-up views of some of these details, which again, I wanted to get back to anyway, talking about how to do these details, because even though the drawing that we have here, we can get away with what we've got. We've got that at 3 inches equals a foot. If there's a need for a blow-up detail, though, we probably want to include it just to be on the safe side to make sure that we show all the information we need. So down here, let's start with dimensioning here. Let's go dim linear. We're going to start at the floor and work our way up. All right. Hey, Trey. All right. Moving that to there, kind of matching what we've done before. I'm just going to leave that 10 inches like we did. There's no need to really put anything extra on that. What we did before was we measured the gap between the base trim and the start of the panel, which was 3/8. And then because this panel has a break line in it, we're going to have to do something a little different than what we've done before. I'll show you how to handle a situation like that. First, let's change these out to say reveal after the dimension. So text override, less than greater than, reveal. Okay, now that we've got that, bring these in a little closer to what we're dealing with. And we also need to make sure that this doesn't overlap our wall and ceiling hatch here too, because we don't want that either. So I'm just bringing that down a little bit to make that work. Okay, so I think I also need to include, well, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of rework here because I added that extra reveal on this one here, and that's not a big deal. We'll get it taken care of. We'll have to add another set of break lines is all, but we'll get that covered here in a sec. So I'm going to come back to the dimensions on this view just for that reason, because I got to do a tiny bit of rework to add in the second spline reveal that we added there. But here on this view, what we can do is we have all of our panels shown. We just put a break line through the elevator door. And actually, because these are lining up with these panels in our elevation, that means that these dimensions here should match up. So if we copy these from this section view to this one, we can save ourselves a little bit of time with having to not put in the reveal, having to dimension all that stuff, because it should be the same. Okay, so that one's good. Thanks. This one's good. But we do need to do some rework here because, like I said, we have more than one reveal. And right now, that's all I'm showing. To make this more accurate, I do need to show both of them. So what we're going to do is we are going to take the reveal lines that we have from above in our elevation view. I'm going to copy these down to about here, maybe in line with our grid. And then what I want to do now is I kind of have to go back to where we started the other day when we made this section view and then we broke it into throwing break lines there. So I need to kind of come back to that. We have two of the well, we have the top reveal and the reveal between the base and one spline reveal, but we need to add this middle one. So I'm drawing construction lines off of these, which were directly copied from my elevation view above. I made sure to line the bottom of those panels up with the bottom of this grid. And that's what we've been doing for these section views here. So as long as I made sure everything was lined up, I can take the spline reveal that we have up here. I can highlight that and copy it and paste it down to here. Okay, now I'm going to have to redo my cleats, and that's okay. It's not a big deal, but I do also probably need to redo my hatching here too, which again, not a big deal. It's kind of a silly mistake, but we will get through it together. So, all right, let's rehatch this. Just like this, and just like this, using that vertical MDF hatch. And then let's respace all of our cleats here. So let's see if we can put one more set of cleats in. Again, those are 24 inches apart. So if you have, I should be able to fit 3 sets of cleats behind this panel here. I'm going to use Shift and right click with the move command to be able to center these cleats on the back of my panel. And then I gotta do the same sort of deal down here too. I gotta see if I can fit one more set of cleats in here. If I can, cool beans. If I can't, that's okay too. I just have to be sure that these all fit on the back of that panel is all. Looks like we should be able to fit 4 sets on that panel. So we're not doing too bad. All right. Now, to be able to clean this up to make this work. Okay, so this is where it gets to be where we're doing a little bit more rework here. So right here, I've got my ceiling height here. I'm going to draw a line straight across to show that. All right, that's where I want my panels to stop because I'm going to throw in some break lines here and break this up to make this work. So what I am going to do is let's start with where we put these break lines to begin with. I'm using a base point of the corner of that panel there to place those here in my view. All right, and I am going to copy these throughout. So right now, they're not where they're going to live permanently, but I'm going to put them here just for right now. What I would like to do is kind of bring these down and up so that way I can actually show these reveals. But my end goal here is that I want to be able to trim all of the panels and cleats that are between these. And if I do that, like if I use a trim command and I select these two as my trim points, I can delete anything in between. And I can do the same here. So I'm keeping the part that has the reveal, but I'm trimming everything else in between. All right, now I will have to rehatch these because, as you know, when you go to trim a hatch, it still stays grouped together, so you can't really stretch it once you trim it. It won't really work very well. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to use the stretch command here. Again, what I did here was I highlighted this portion, so like the blank space between the two panels and the break lines up to there. And then what I would like to do is kind of try to bring this down a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing here too. So from here up, just like that, making sure I'm copying the blank space. And then this time around, what I'm going to do is use the base point of up here in the hopes that what I can do now is kind of bring that all together like this. Now that I've got that lined up, I got to fix my hatching here because you can see that the hatching kind of didn't really stretch well because it's a block and it doesn't really work the same as like a line or a polyline or anything. So I got to manually change that. But what I can do now is I can replace, well, let's actually trim these two, sorry. We don't want those sticking out past the break lines. The point of the break line is to make sure that you don't have anything extending through there because we're trying to show that, hey, this is where we're breaking the view. Let's see, trim. There we go. All right, now we're getting somewhere. All right. All right. Whoops, deleted a hatch there. My bad. All right, let's rehatch these panels too one last time. And then what we can do is bring these over to where our section view is currently. So I'm going to replace that one with this one. I just used the move command and I highlighted both of those section views, and what my plan was is to kind of place that there and then delete the old one. Now if I go back to my paper space, because that's exactly where the old one was, that means that now that I'm looking at this, that means that these are all going to be in line with one another. One more thing I could do to make this aesthetically a little bit more pleasing, I suppose, I could line up this break line with this one. That way it looks like everything's lined up, even though this one has one set of break lines, the other one has two. But I just used the stretch command to do that. That's a little better. All right, so now we can dimension these. So sorry about that. I have this one dimension, but this one here we need to get to. So we're going to go dim len, making sure we are in our, we're dimensioning in the model space and not the paper space here. All right, dim continue. Now, as a drafter, you really should never override a dimension, as in replace the actual dimension numbers with a different number. The only time you should do that is when you're dealing with break lines. But like any other case, you never want to do that ever, because that is just kind of like cheating the system. It's kind of lazy to do it that way. And also, like, you're not really drawing accurately at that rate if you're changing dimensions. But when you're dealing with break lines like this, you do have to drop in a real dimension for those, because you can't say that this panel is 23 inches because we know that it's not. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our elevation view over here. And I need to pull these dimensions here and use these in my section view. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a screenshot of what I'm looking at here, since it's on a different page. And I'll just open it up on the side like this. And then I can go over to my section view, and then I can just make sure that these all match up. So right now, clearly this is not 23 inches. It should be 60 3/4. So we need to change that. And again, this is the only time you will ever need to do this. So 60 3/4. And if you notice, when you do type in a fraction, it will come in at a smaller scale. You can change that if you click on the lightning bolt in the text box here. You go to stack properties, it will allow you to change the text size to 100% instead of 70. And once you've done that, your text will look like what it's supposed to here. We have to do that here though too. So we need to be at 85 3/8. We have this at 20 3/8 right now. So let's delete our dimension and we'll type in the right dimension. Be very careful that you're typing in the correct dimension. Like I said, that's why I do the screenshot off to the side, because I want to make sure that I'm not typing in something incorrectly, because we don't want to have any confusion on the drawing at all. 85 3/8. All right, cool. And then these, like we've done before, and up here, we can change these to read reveal. So highlight the reveal dimensions, go into text override, less than greater than reveal. And then we're going to lower this just like we did before. I just lowered it a 1/2 inch previously. That's what I'm going to do here too. Oh, and it looks like I brought it in a little bit too. So like that. Okay. So that's good. That's all we need there. So dimensionally, I think we've completed everything we need to do for the dimensions of the print. We are going to go back though, and we are going to do our material calls next. And then we're going to finalize the drawing by putting on the elevation section and detail calls. So materials, let's go back to our architectural drawing. That was on page A620. So let me pull that up here. And we'll just make sure that we have the correct materials on the print. And then we're going to label our panels as needed. A620. There we go. All right. Ready, set, go. We have WDV01, which is going to actually be our VN1. We also have SS01, O1, which will be our SS1. That'll be at the base. So we have VN1 for the panels, SS1 for the base, and then we also have a metal call for the metal angle. If you want to go back to what we did in P15, you can see we called that out as hardware 57. So we're actually dealing with the exact same materials as what we did on P15, which is kind of convenient. Makes things easier to put on the print. Let's go ahead and start adding in our material calls. So like we talked about before, when you're dealing with an elevation view, typically the standard of placing those calls on there is you want to do one column of these for your whole wall. And that will be what we'll do here as well. So let's go and add those in. We're going to go over to our plot tool. Let's go to finish symbols. And we're going to add these in here. So starting with SS1 for the base. You can resize this bubble as you need to, if you need to. Sometimes I like to make them a little bit larger than I need to, but maybe we'll go 5/8. I don't know, just to give it a little wiggle room, but not like take up the entire piece of base trim here. So, oh, hold on, let me do that again. Again, got to be in your model space here. So we're going to place those in SS1. And I think what I did previously was I kind of just made this work out the way that I feel like it should. So I'm going to go and start by taking this corner here with the move command, placing it in the corner of my base trim, moving it 2 inches over and 2 inches up. We'll do the same thing here. And this time this is going to say VN1. And you got to remember to check anytime you have a laminate or a veneer, there's a potential that it could have a grain direction to it. And if you do have a grain direction, you need to put a grain direction symbol to let our veneer department know which way the grain needs to face. And also let the architect look at it and approve if they like that design. Typically what we'll do with panels, especially wall panels, is that you're going to have grain that runs vertically like this. So come on, there we go. And to move it over a little bit more. So your grain is most likely going to run vertically. We are going to make that assumption here. I don't think it's noted on the architecturals, but that is usually the industry standard for that. Now, we've done what we need to do for the panels here, but let's make sure that we also include a veneer call for this here too. This would be the leg on the inside of that portal that we have as part of our drawing. All right, so material calls, we're good on that. All right, let's go up to here, and we're going to copy these to this view up top as well. So we'll use the copy command or copy base. I'm going to use this corner, highlight all of these ones in this column, and then paste them here like that. And then we're going to do the same thing here too. Copy base, highlight that corner, pick up those material bubbles and the grain directions, and we're going to place that there. All right, so material calls are good on this. I also am going to put a couple other notes on here before we go ahead and call this one done. So one thing I want to do is put a note in the middle here that says elevator, door, and jam by others. I can use actually the finish call to do that. If you want to use that, you can. There's an option in there in the drop down for these text box with 2 arrows. And what you'll do is you'll type in here, elevator, doors, and jam by others, or B/O. You can make this multiple lines if you want to make it fit better. That's usually what I do here. And then you can take these arrows and stretch them out so that way they fit better on the page. You may also have to add more lines to your text if it's still not fitting just right. But let's see what we've got here. Drop this in the middle. Drop this in the middle here using my mid between 2 points to get that centered like this. Okay, so yeah, clearly I do need to either drop these arrows in like this, or I need to add an extra line of text. Either one will work. I probably will add the extra line of text. I don't like how close those arrows are to the sides of my elevator there. So let's change that up. Read this note. Maybe we'll change it to say doors and jam by others like that. That way it fits a little better. Okay, like that, that'll work. And then I'm just going to recenter this on the wall or the door. Just like that. All right, and then we're going to copy this to each elevator. All right, each of these gets one of those notes, just like that. Okay, now there's also a panel that's up here that is not by onsite too, if you recall, going back to the architecturals, that's that MTL01 panel, which again, we have this note here that says MTL01 is by others. It is also in the takeoff too. If you go to that Excel file, you can read that note is in there. So what I'm going to do is make a note up here on this part of the drawing that says MTL01 panel by others here. Okay, we'll resize that. And then we'll center this on that panel, just like this. Okay. There we go. And we're going to apply that to each of these panels too, just like we did for the elevator doors. All right, and of course that one doesn't have one because it's only got 2 doors on that side. Okay, so these are looking really good. Got our added notes, our our material calls. I think we're looking pretty good right there. So we'll move on to the last elevation and the section views, and we're going to add material calls, grain directions, and all the information we need here for these. So, all right, let's do this. Starting with the elevation view, let's add in some VN1 calls for the veneer of the portal. VN-1. I'm going to put 1 arrow on that. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit of breathing room. And then what I'm going to do is kind of place this roughly in the corner here. What I would like to do with that is I do have to add 1 more leader to this because I want to make sure that I'm calling out, let me bring this over just a little bit more. I'm calling out both the panel on the top and the leg here as being VN1. So in order for me to do that, I need to type in leader, use the leader command, and I'm going to change the arrowhead to an arrowhead instead of a dot. So in your properties, if you go down to lines and arrows, you can actually change that there if you need to. We're going to mirror this over to this side over here. All right. And then I want to put 1 note in the middle here that says open to beyond. Let's do that text with 2 arrows note. Open to beyond. And that just signifies that this is an opening with no panels and no doors. It's just an open corridor going down the hallway. All right. You can play around with the arrows, move them how you'd like to, kind of adjust them as needed. But what I'm going to do is use the mid between 2 points again with the move command, and I'm going to center this right in the opening between the 2 points here, just like that. In that view, I'm going to call that done right there. All right, so let's move on to the section views. Section views, what we're going to do is we're going to call out the hardware 54? 57. Hardware 57 for that metal angle, and then the SS1 for the base and the VN1 for the panels. Okay, let's go ahead and place that there. Oops, hold on. Come back. All right, place that there. Make sure the arrowhead is touching the object that you're calling out. Call out the hardware for the angle next at 57. So HW57. And then VN1 for the panels. All right, and I'm just going to copy these throughout to show each panel finish. Might be a little overkill, but I kind of want to do that just to show what these panels are going to be. Just like that. And I think that we can call that done dimensionally and material call wise. So let's go into the last lap here, where we're going to put in our elevation calls next and our section calls, and then we'll go through and see what kind of details we want to add for this drawing. So let's see, elevation calls. Let's drag in a couple of those. Kind of like to place those centered on the middle of what I'm calling out. Let's copy. There we go. And again. Kind of get these a little nice and centered. Then let's make sure that we're calling out the correct wall. So the one with the 3 doors is going to be view number 3. The one with the 2 doors will be view number 2. So 2 and 3. And always remember, if you have a view that's not on the same page as your material, or sorry, your elevation or section call, you will have to replace what's in this gray box here with the correct page that that view is actually on. If you do not, it's always going to show the page that this is on, which may or may not be correct depending on your drawing. In our case, these views are on the same page, so we do not have to replace that. It's just something to keep in mind though. All right, section calls. All right, let's go ahead and add these in. So we need 1 here for the panels and 1 here for the panels above the elevator door. The panels themselves will be view 2 on P4.1, and the door will be view 3 on P4.1. So let's add those in. And again, because that view is on a separate page, this does need to be replaced to P4.1. When you are placing these two, be sure to make sure that you are not overlapping anything. But you can see what I did there, my tail for my section is not overlapping any dimensions, and it's not overlapping my view. And the same thing goes for up here, not overlapping my view or my dimensions or any text that's on that view. You want to be very careful not to do that. Okay, so these two are placed there. Let's go over to our model space, and we will copy these to our other view. Let's see, that is for the panels, so we got to find a good place to put that. And then one for the door, we'll find a good place to set that down. So right there is probably fine. Okay. And the last thing I want to do too is I want to put a detail in here, specifically for the door jamb on this side here. So like right now, I don't have a very good way to show this. And it's going to be something I really, really do think we're going to need to see. So one thing we can do is I could add in one more section view potentially, which I actually do kind of show here on our elevation view. So maybe really not, instead of a section view, maybe what we need to do is make a blow up view of this, which we can do that. That would be fine. And I think I'll put that on this page here, right above here, and it kind of correlates to what's happening here anyway, so that should work out just fine. So to make that blow up view, what you're going to do is you're going to make a, usually you would use a circle. In this case, we're going to use a rectangle to do this. And make sure that you are in your paper space for this. You want to be in the paper space and not the model space here. So I'm drawing a rectangle over what it is that I want to see. I'm going to offset that over using T for through. And then what I'm going to do is click that rectangle and, oops, hold on. T for through, and then find a distance that I'm happy with as far as like how far off the view I want to be. This might be a little large, but we'll see how it goes. So we're going to then fillet the corners. The fillet command will let you radius those corners. And when you start the fillet command, you're going to go down here. We're going to click on radius, and we're going to set a radius for these corners. I just picked 1/8 of an inch here. I think that'll look fine. And we're going to round these corners out like this. Highlight that rectangle now, and we're going to put it on the dimension layer. And then also change the line type to hidden or hidden to. Then what we want to do with that is we're going to copy this view, the view title, and the rectangle we just drew. We're going to do a VP clip command to crop this viewport to this rectangle. Then we're going to change the size of this to be something that it's going to fit better on the page. All right. And if we got that there, what I'm going to do now, and this will actually break the formula, but it's the only way to really get this to fit on the other page. So I'm going to use Control X, which is cut, and then go back to page 2 and Control V and paste it in. When I do that, you'll see that I have my viewport still, and I have my view title down here. But you'll also notice that it is a not referencing anything there as far as that goes. So that broke, but we can fix that. And actually, now that I'm looking at this, unless I can move this over a little more, I may have to put this on a extra page at the end, but I'm hoping I don't have to do that. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to. That is okay. We can make it work. Just barely doesn't fit. So rather than us putting this on this page, let's do a control. Well, no, let's make another page first. So right click on your last page, go to move or copy, go to create a copy and move to end, and hit OK. And it'll give us one more page at the very end to work with, P4.2. We'll delete this from here because it's no longer going to be a part of that drawing. And then we're going to go to P4.2, and we're going to eliminate anything that we do not need here. So kind of all that will go away. I'm going to take my view title and my view, and I'm going to start to line this stuff up. So starting here at the corner, Just drop that in right there. Move the view title up a ½ inch here, so that way it's not touching the border of my drawing. And then I like to move that over 1.5 inches from the edge of the page like this. That's the default location in your template there too. So every time that you do start a drawing, you'll see that that's where that actually sits to start with. Now, what I did here was I moved my detail so it's lined up with the corner there. I'm going to move that up 1.5 inches like this. All right, and then the last thing here, we got to fix this formula. So this formula right now shows a bunch of hashtags, which we know is not correct. To fix that, you're going to go to Edit Field. So again, what I did there was I double-clicked on that broken formula, right-clicked on the hashtags, and go to Edit Field here. It's going to tell you that it's not valid because the object is not on the page. That's fine. So this gets to be really complicated, and that's why I suggest we try not to mess with this unless you have to. So here, what you want to do is go to Objects, and then go to Object here. And then up here, there's a little icon where you can select objects. So you're going to click on that. And you're going to navigate to your description here and click on the name of your drawing. All right, and then before you click OK, you want to make sure that this reads contents. And it'll show you a preview of what it'll say there. So it'll say veneer panel. So you can click OK, click OK. And now we fixed that essentially. Okay, so that's fixed. And we have this detail pulled in. Let's see about what other details we want to make before we start dimensioning and tagging these. All right, so let's go back to our drawing and see what else we've got. So previously what we've done is we have, looking back at P15, we made full scale details of the top reveal, the full depth reveal to the ceiling. We've made full scale details of the spline reveal between the panels. And we made a full scale detail of the metal angle reveal between the base trim and the panel there. So we're going to remake those on this drawing as well. And we're also going to hunt down any other drawing details that we might want to include too. Although this here is actually very similar to the detail we just made, I might make a view of this as well to show what that looks like from the top down. I think we also want to include, well, that spline reveal will apply to that, and the full depth reveal, well, we can make a full depth reveal for these two. So it looks like we need to make 5 extra details, which we should be able to fit on that last page. We're going to do that real quick and get through these. So just like we did previously on your paper space, make sure that you're in your paper space and you're going to highlight this area here. And I'm going to use the offset command again. And last time I went 0.125 off of that to give myself a little bit of margin. And then I filleted the corners with a radius of 0.125. Which then gives you the appearance of like a detail bubble. It's just elongated because it's a rectangular one. So we need to go to the layer manager and make that the dimension layer. Go to your properties and make that the hidden to line type there. And we're going to do the same thing we did previously. We're going to copy the view title, and the box that we're using to make the detail. All right, so VP clip. And the last one I did was 6 inches equals a foot. So I think I'm going to maintain that same exact view scale type here too, or view scale for this one. I'm not going to go ahead and get this set up, but then what I'm going to do is use the Control X to cut that and then paste it into our last page down here. Sometimes when you do that, you'll see that the view, the border around your detail disappears. If you just type in regen, that will bring it right back. It's like a refresh for AutoCAD. All right, let's move these around. We can letter sorry, we can label our views once we know where we're going to put them. That actually works pretty good right there. So we've got this corner kind of covered with these two panels here. Let's fix the broken formula again. So double click, right click on the hashtags, edit field. Okay. Go down to the drop down, select objects, go down to object, select objects, and then go to your title. And then make sure you click on content to make sure the label is correct. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we will label these once we get to the end of the drawing. We'll label these with letters because they are details, and details get letters instead of numbers. If there are any architectural references for any of these, we'll update those too. A lot of times with details there won't be, but we'll keep that in mind that we got to check for that. All right. On this view here, I wanted to make one more detail, and that was to the transition between the full depth reveal and the metal for the elevator jamb. So this one's smaller. I think what I'm going to do is use a circle instead of a rectangle for that. And I'm going to use the mid between 2 points to start this, going from like here to there, like that. And then I'm going to put this on the dimension layer and make this a hidden to line type. And again, same process, copy that, copy the view, and copy the view title. And then VP clip to VP clip this down to there. And then set this to the appropriate scale that you want to use for your drawing. So I'm using 1 inch equals a foot for these smaller circular details. Or sorry, not 1 inch equals a foot, 1 foot equals a foot, so full scale. And we'll copy that over to here. Regen to bring all that back. And then we'll place it on our drawing here. All right. Now, let's see. I want to move this over a grid space to give it a little bit of margin between this view and this view. And I'm going to change this to read detail. We'll edit field, objects, object, select object, a lot of objects. Then go to the title down here to fix that. Whoops, hold on, I jumped ahead a little bit too fast. I skipped a step. I need to make sure that reads contents and not color. There we go. Now it's fixed. All right, again, we'll relabel these as we get done with this page, so that way they're all in the right order. All right, so I need 3 more details, and those are going to be coming off of these views here. So I want one for the reveal at the top, one for the spline reveal, and one for this reveal here. I'll pull those all from this exact view. So again, we'll use the circle for these because they are smaller. And let's go maybe, I don't know, 1/2 inch might be a little small, but it looks about like what we did before. So let's go dimension and hidden to line type. And then before I even make my views, I'm going to actually replicate this. So copy that. And I'm pasting these all the way up to the areas that I want to make details of. Then last thing here, let's copy all 3 of those bubbles, our view title and our view port. Paste those off to the side over here. And actually, I should make 3 copies of these because we're making 3 views. So then VP clip, we'll go there, there, and there. All right, and then we'll make that full scale. And then let's copy these over to our last page here. Just going to line all these up. So same method of approach that we've been doing for all of these. And then I am going to line these up kind of off to the side, similar to what we did here before. I'm going to make like a sort of a column for these a little bit. We use the same exact method of, placing these on the print. Actually, before I move that one, let's make sure that these are lined up. It's kind of nitpicky, but really you want to make sure that this lines up with this because that's going to be the most aesthetic thing you can do for your print. Making sure that all your views line up with each other and all your view titles also line up with each other. If you don't do that, it just kind of looks like you just threw everything together and you really don't want that. It's going to look kind of weird. Just checking something here too. Okay, so this view is actually a little bit off. Need to come over to there. All right. All right. Well, we've got all of our views on the page. All right. And now I think that's all the details we wanted to make. So what we're going to do now is we are going to start labeling these. Okay. So first things first, let's go left to right. So these are the plan view details. So I'm going to go A and B for these because they're on the first page. It'll make it easier to remember. I'll probably go down here and then make this C. And then we'll go D, E, and F for these. You got to make sure that these all read detail view. And we got to make sure that these formulas are not broken too. So I'm just going to quickly do these real quick so we can get these over with. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so all those are fixed. All of our details are labeled. And so I think the last thing I want to do is if I have any ARC references for any of these, I'm going to apply them to the view titles too. The only ones that I think I might have are these two. The rest of these I know aren't actually in the architecturals or they're not detailed very well in the architecturals. Oh wait, no, wait, this one does have one because it's the same as that. So I'm going to write SIM. That was for the metal angle above the base trim. So SIM 4/A-730. But again, a lot of these other ones, they didn't really detail them out. These are kind of millwork related only. Like we put these in there because they showed the panels tight to the elevator jambs, which you really can't do. So last couple ones here, we've got the leg and the header panel above the door. Let's go back to our drawing and just see if we have any sort of a view that may or may not show that. So here, it looks like I should have a section that cuts through that onto A741. That would be through the header of my opening. So we'll label that 2 on A-741. And the leg, just to check, I don't think that we're given a view of that other than the plan view. So what I'm going to do is write NA for this one, because I don't think we have a call out for any sort of a detail or a section going through that leg. All right, let's dimension these. And then what we're going to do from there is we're just going to add our detail calls to our elevations and our plan views. So again, kind of quickly going through this, applying my dimensions as we need to. And I'm also making sure that I'm dimensioning in my model space and not my paper space here. Sometimes for panels, I like to also show the gap between the wall and the panel so we can represent what that would look like. Again, like what we've been doing, it's a good idea to label these as revealed anytime you have one of those dimensions. So I should do that here and up top too. Okay, and then moving on to the header panel down below, let's throw in our dimensions here. And make sure we label these appropriately. Gotta make sure nothing's being cut off by the viewport. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next few views we got here. So just like what we've done on P15, we're going to match the same dimension style for these. I'm going to go and do the width of these from wall to front of reveal block and from panel thickness like this. And then I'm going to show the necessary gap for there. Again, you could label this with reveal if you want to, if it fits. Same thing here. Let's go and measure this. This one, I don't think I can really fit reveal on there, but I will, well, I could if I put it in the paper space like what I'm doing here. That would work. I just got to put a background mask on that so it doesn't get intersected by the bubble. So I'm going to properties and fill color here, and I'm going to select background. That will white out anything behind my dimension there. And like what I did up top, we'll go and do a couple of dimensions here. One from the back of the panel to the wall, and one from the back of the panel to the front of the panel. And then down here, we're going to match that exact same dimension style here. We're going to show the 16th inch gap right there, the thickness of the metal, and then the 16th inch gap below that. Let's move these so that they are not overlapping anything and they are showing where they need to be showing. Kind of like that. And then again, the gaps. So gap to wall, to back of panel, and back of panel to front of panel. And then this one here, because it is overlapping that bubble, we want to make sure there's a background mask or fill color applied to that dimension there too. Okay, last thing here, we need to add in the material and hardware calls to these. So what we're going to do is we're going to label all the panels as VN1. And I'm going to do that actually in the paper space, which I know I usually tend to tell you not to do. But sometimes with these details, there's a lot less room inside the bubbles, and it's better to do that here. So that way you don't have to put the material call inside of the bubble. Like here, if I wanted to, I could put it there, and that would be fine. I could put it outside the bubble, though, too, if I don't have enough space, and that would also be acceptable, too. Again, anytime I have a leader, though, I want to make sure that it is a arrowhead and not a dot. Okay, let's copy these throughout. So working my way through the drawing here. Make sure that your leader is touching your panel, just like that. And then we're going to go here to here. And also over here to here. Now, one more thing I got to do too is I got to call out the hardware. As you notice, I have the Z clips here on the ceiling, which is actually a hardware call. That'll be hardware 20. So in our drawing here, I need to make sure that I point that out, at least in the places that they appear. So yeah, so hardware 20. We have a hardware call over here, so let's make sure to point that out. And we have our solid surface base, so let's point that out too. I'm going to have to put that way up there, but that's okay. Hardware 57. All right. Now, we should just need a couple more veneer calls and we should be home free. Okay. There we go. I think that'll do it. All right. Last step here before we call it done is that we need to put in the detail calls on the drawing, and then we need to fill out our page notes. So a couple last minute things to do. Detail calls are pretty easy. You just got to make sure that you put the correct letter and then you fill out the right page number. So P4.2 is where all of our details live. There we go. What I'm doing here is drawing an arc and then trimming it here so that the arc is touching the center of the circle and then the center of the detail call. So this one is detail B, as you can see there. So let's make sure we point that out correctly. Those are the only two details we had on the plan view. Elevation view, we called out this one here. So let's make sure to add that too. And then this was detail C on P4.12. So I'm going to trim this back there. Match properties to there. All right. Now, should be it for that view. Then we got our three section details here. So D, F, and E, or D, E, and F. So we'll go over to here and get those labeled accordingly. So let's go view D on P4.2. And then I think that'll probably about summon. Oh no, we got to do the page notes still, and then we'll be done. There we go. D, E, and F. Boom. Okay, page notes though. Okay, so back to where we were. We know that we're using VN1 and SS1. So we need those two. SS1, where are you? There you go. And then I need hardware 57, like we talked about, and also hardware 20 for the Z-clips. So Z-clips, hardware 20, right there. Let's snag that. And 57 if it's in here. If not, we will be adding it here then. All right, so I need to add one in. So no big deal. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Double click on here. Actually, this is a block, so let's explode this. Type over this hardware 57, and then we got to go to the material log to pull up the hardware 57. Let's see, Proscenium hardware 57. There it is right there. All right, looks good to me. Make sure that we don't have anything else to add here, and if we don't, then we're going to copy all these page notes to the other drawings as well. Just kind of skimming through what we've got. I do think that's about it. Let's go and make sure there's no general notes to add. I know for a fact, though, we will be using the all walls and floors by others for this one. And let's see, anything else to note? Not really on these guys. Yep, I think that might actually be it. Okay, so let's copy these using copy base to copy all of these notes to the rest of our pages on our print. Make sure you grab all of them. We use copy base, and what I did there when I pasted it was I used the base point of this corner. So then every time I paste it in now, it's going to use that corner to paste it. All right, so now that I'm done there, I'm going to save my drawing, and then I'm going to publish it to the new drafting files folder. Make sure to remove the model space from there, and then hit publish. Go find your job folder, so Proscenium, drawings, new drafting files. And again, as long as your file is named correctly, you can go ahead and save it just like this to the NDF. If this is the first version of that print, you're going to save version 1.0 at the end. Any revisions through in-house means like the PM or the lead drafter will be at version 1.1 or 1.2. Any revisions from there on out from the architect or the contractor outside the company would be version 2.0, 2. Or well, 3.0, etc. So the first number would change for that. Let's go ahead and save it there. It's going to publish all three prints. And then what we got to do is we would do our exit review with our drafting checklist that you have a copy of at your desk. And then we would go through one last time and mark it as review once that is complete. There we go, just like that. All right, so that concludes that, and then we can move on to the next subject here, which would be tables and die walls and islands from there.